Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Indy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Looks over the middle, second guesses, fires, throws. Does he make the catch in the end zone? Yes! Touchdown! Oladipo to win it.
Another one! Another one!
Huge hole! He's at the 30! He's gonna go! 10, 5, touchdown! Jonathan Taylor!
Worked down by Burke. Bounces into Cody. Puts it up. Scores!
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome into Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. Here as we reach the last week of not having football. We are heading into week 0 tomorrow. Week 0 being why it's week 0. Good name for it. Just a few teams opening up. But then we have week 1 next week with this is actually preview. Next week will be preview week for everything. So we'll be talking about, of course, the upcoming games throughout the Big Ten. We'll talk about Indiana, Iowa. We'll get perspectives from Iowa on. I know Monday I'm doing a show someplace else for that, but that's a big game next week. We'll look over today's this weekend's schedule as well. I know that Illinois and Nebraska open up for out of the Big Ten, and that's going to be an interesting matchup. We've talked about the need for Scott Frost to win, but also it's going to be a uphill sledding for him. But Alec Lasley is going to join us today from thehoosier.com. We've got basketball recruiting updates as Noah Clowney is getting the next domino to potentially fall for Indiana. What else is going on out there? They already have a top 10 recruiting class. What can they add to that? Because I'm sure they're not done. Robert Carter, got guys listening already. The truth on early. Jesse, Dwayne, guys, all of you guys, thanks a lot for joining us. We appreciate you. Hit us up on the Andy Moore Honda hotline if you've got questions, comments, whatever, especially if you're following YouTube Live. That's where most people follow us if you're watching. Otherwise, you can follow us on the podcast as well. And, of course, on radio stations like 97.7 The Ref in Evansville, WBRO 89.9 down in Marengo. And any place that where you live, if you think we should be on, there's a station, let us know or let them know. They should be carrying us. Also, thehoosier.com is an incredible special going on right now. If you guys have not taken part of that, you're crazy. It's only $1.68 a month, $20 for the entire year. That's inside premium content coverage. And there are some things coming up that you're not going to want to miss out on. On the program today, Dustin Dopirak is going to join us along with Alec Lasley and Mike Farrell from Rivals. Rivals national football analyst is going to talk with us as well. Trying to get Jalen Hood-Ochefino on. I'm not sure we're going to be able to get him on today, so his schedule's just not quite working out. But we've got plenty to get to and plenty to talk about. High school football in action tonight. Make sure you get out and catch a high school game if you can. Support those high school kids.
1903
Boy, 1903 cold. How do you stop that? Commercials jumping on. I hate when that happens. But, yeah, if you can get out and see a game, get out and see a game. Support those guys. We've got the COVID issues that are kind of sneaking around out there, so do what you can to deal with that. Lots going on this weekend. As I said, college football gets off on week 0. We've got some comments from yesterday, John, to get to from Indiana football. So there's just a ton going on this weekend as usual. And I don't even have the this weekend's schedule pulled up yet, but curious on who else is playing.
Well, I got the schedule pulled up for you. Excuse me. The other intriguing matchup for me, I would say, would be UConn at Fresno State. And then just from an Indiana perspective, because Kalen DeBoer, former offensive coordinator, is the head coach of the Bulldogs out in Fresno State. So
that should be a great, easy opening game for him. UConn is Randy Edsall back there?
Either way, Randy Edsall is a joke, I think.
I'm not saying he is or isn't, but that's the only success that they had under him. But yeah, that's an interesting game I'm really going to like to see what he does in his second year. I think that's a guy that you're going to see again one day. Kalen DeBoer. When he was here, I liked how he handled things. He's easygoing. He's not uptight, which is great for an offensive coordinator because that means you're relaxed in important times of crunch. And he seems like he's got that. Nick Sheridan is very calm too. I'm a big fan of Dale Earnhardt. I don't listen to hardly any other podcasts. And this is a radio show that gets sent out as a podcast, but podcasting wise, I listen to very few because I don't have time. One I watch, I don't even listen to it, I watch it, is Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s. I just love his history and all he has got on there. And he's always got these stories on. And that's what I like to watch because it brings up all these different stories from underneath. Rivalries. Last night he had a guy on there, Buckshot Jones. He talked about rivalries. So that's just something I enjoy. I was actually going somewhere with that point and I forgot. But let's see. Hoover threw for 300 and talking about Josh Hoover, I see already this morning. Hoover threw for 398 and 4 scores last night. Oh, they played early. Josh Hoover, he's talking about, another recruit for Indiana, a quarterback coming up out of Texas. We had him on the show earlier once he committed. This kid is another. I was talking about that mindset. Oh, that's what took me to talk about last night. I was watching Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s podcast. He had a guy named Buckshot Jones on there. But his demeanor was so slow and easygoing. You can see that people like me who are jacked up, man, when it comes to those times, it's harder to remain calm in those situations. And those guys are already, they stay that way. And it's weird. But Josh Hoover is a kid like that. Funny that you bring him up. Again, 398 and 4 scores last night. That's the start. This kid's on fire. I mean, and Indiana has a quarterback room that is unbelievable already. And this kid's going to add to it next year. And I'm telling you, he's a damn good quarterback. But they've got some damn good quarterbacks. They have 3. And I shouldn't discount the other guys. I just haven't seen them. But I'm talking about your top 3 at quarterback for Indiana. All very good. All potentially could play at the next level. All 3 of them. And that's not even counting Josh Hoover, who's not here yet, who Russ mentioned there. A little trivia from Sam. UConn versus Fresno State is the longest road trip for any Division I school this season. How about that? Man. Oh, that makes sense too. Man, 120 miles. Dude, they've got to be getting, and that's not a P5 game like where they're going to play, say a Pac-12 team out there where they're getting paid $1 million to do it. Now, I don't know if that's a home and home or if they're getting paid, but man, that's not a great home and home. I wouldn't think, not for UConn. Especially UConn's a program that when all this conference realignment took place, they were left out in the cold. And that has a devastating effect on the ability to make money for these schools, I promise you. Dwayne says, talking about Dustin Schutte from yesterday, our co-host from Saturday Tradition, says he can't believe never seen breaking away. Well, I don't think that he went to Indiana, first of all. He's from the state of Indiana, but I don't think he went to Indiana. But yeah, a little being in sports. Yeah, I was a little surprised. I'm gonna be honest with you, Dwayne. I was a little surprised, but I gave him all the grief we could give him, and we'll give him some more grief next week, especially if he doesn't watch it between now and then. And I'll give him a heads up. Rumor out that Memphis landed 2 top recruits and promised them an NIL deal with FedEx. Yeah, I'm not getting into that because we don't know anything about that. Rumors are not rumors are rumors. Dude, NIL deals are what they are. I've talked about that all along, the possibility of big-time companies like FedEx is housed at Memphis. Well, that's not a problem if it's within. The problem is I don't think they've set a benchmark. It's kind of like what's considered pornography. That was such a gray line. I forget what the words were. If it was offensive to the public, that was deemed if it was illegal or not. Well, what's offensive to the public? So it's, but the reason I said they have not set a hard line on what is out of bounds. And that's going to be the problem. But again, if someone's worth that much money, why are they in college? I think the rich are going to get richer. Now there will be a case if there is a big enough donor. Let's say you had someone like Mark Cuban that didn't go to IU. Let's say Mark Cuban went to Tulsa. This big or better Valpo or Evansville. If Mark Cuban went to an Evansville or a Valpo and he really wanted to make a difference, oh yeah, he could. He could say, all right, we're going to do NIL deals. Go out and start recruiting. I got you NIL deals set up. Now, that in and of itself is not going to do that. But if you can get one guy to take it, then you'll get another, and then the rest will follow. But if someone really wanted to build that way, yeah, they probably could. Maybe. We'll see. They'll have the opportunity to do that. Forrest says, no way Tuttle is NFL material, in his opinion. Well, I'm going to disagree with that. He is a prototypical NFL type quarterback. We only got to see him in a backup role last year, being forced in because of Penix's injury, but he has done nothing but take the reps as the first team. He got to take all those reps, and he is a solid quarterback. He was one of the top 11 in the country when he came here, and I don't think that has changed. You have to get a little experience because that's the difference in seeing. Even I use other quarterbacks. Donovan McCullough, while looks tremendous and you can see the upside that he has, he's not starting anytime soon. You could also see that. So there's a level you've got to get there. But I think potentially all four of Indiana's quarterbacks, of course, Hoover's not here yet, but the three they have and Hoover could potentially play at the next level. They're all built. McCullough's a 6'5" dude that looks very, very confident back there. And Tuttle is also a big, hard-throwing guy. Penix, Michael is going to possibly have the hardest time, although he has the greatest set of tools, his health. And the NFL is going to, we're late, so I got to get to a break, but they're going to make sure that he can stay healthy. The NFL is a hell of a lot harder place to stay alive than college football. We got to take a break. Alec Lasley is coming up next. We got to talk about basketball recruiting and lots more. You're listening to Indiana Sports Beat, brought to you by the great folks at Andy Moore Honda Bloomington. Go reserve your Honda today, right now, that's coming in. Give them a call, Andy Moore Honda Bloomington. Back right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, Hoosier fans. How was that?
Good. I think you're getting the hang of in just a couple of days, actually, doing those live reads between breaks.
What'd you say?
I think you're getting the hang of just knowing to do the live reads between breaks.
Well, it's just habit. But it helps to have whoever's sponsoring the next segment up, if I can see that.
Yeah, I can. Well, I have logos for a few of them. It's like I've got
don't forget to put up.
Got Psalms, Andy Moore. What do you say?
Who don't you have?
Well, some of them you told me not to put them up for, and I don't know if you want me to say that out loud.
No, I don't. But that's okay. Actually, there's none that can't go up for a segment.
Okay, well that's fine, and that's what I do anyway.
Yeah, especially for segments. Dude, that's the reminder for me. And then there was some. Oh yeah, make sure you get that Hoosier promo up.
Sorry, I unmuted myself or muted myself. The one I made the other day, is that what you're talking about?
That's fine. That'll work.
All right, I'll pull that up here later. And then well, this next segment, I have it set to be Andy Moore again, but I can switch it if you want. We'll do Remax. I need to switch the segment intro.
Hello, Alec.
Hello. Happy Friday.
Mr. Patagonia.
Hey, remember this? Actually, hold on. It might take me a second. Oh, I got rid of it. I need to re-upload it. It was the baby picture,
fine.
But I ain't gonna put it. You already know what it is.
You don't need to re-upload that.
It is in my phone. I'm not kidding. I go every time I go through photos, I'm like, oh, there it is. I hold on to that stuff. All right, what do we got?
Clowney and Bates Clowney and Caleb Banks are on their official visits. That's obviously the biggest news, and then obviously Hood Schifino, since he did that on Tuesday after we talked last Friday. So those are the biggest things. Outside of that, not a ton, because they're really just focused on getting Clowney kind of settled in this weekend.
All right, here we go. We got 5 seconds.
Restaurants, professionals in the art of food and drink. This segment is brought to you by Remax Advanced Realty, Indie Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Here's Jim Coyle.
Welcome back and happy Friday. Jim Coyle with you as always. Alec Lasley from thehoosier.com joining us now. And if you're not aware, they have a crazy special going on right now. If you do not have a subscription to thehoosier.com Indiana Rivals, you're crazy, because it's only $20 for the entire year. And that is for premium coverage. That's $1.68 a month. Just go Alec, where do they go? Just go to thehoosier.com.
Yeah, it's on the homepage. It's typically in any of the articles and in social media everywhere. So as long as you're following something with thehoosier.com, you'll be able to find it somewhere.
Yeah, there. Or you can put that back up. There you go. $1.68 for a month is what it works out to for the entire year. Just go to the thehoosier.com for that and get that taken care of. Complete insiders coverage for basketball, and there's some things coming up that you're not going to want to miss on there. That I promise you. Let's see. Tim Lazich says Woodson is building a great foundation with Bates, Banks, Gunn, and Schifino. Those are 4 that are in place. Pretty for a guy that everyone talked about not being able to recruit and all this and that. Not a bad job getting a top 10 recruiting. It's actually top 8 right now, top 8 recruiting class going into the season. I believe that's the highest ranked recruiting class Indiana has had in, I don't even know how many years, but I know it's longer than the last 4. And so you could probably go back to potentially, I don't know, maybe the movement. I even hate to use that word, but that just gives a time reference for people. Was there a bigger class than that in between then and now?
It'll be interesting to see what this class ends up with. I think this class ends up being the best class, but I think as of right now, that Romeo Langford class with Archie Miller may have been a little bit higher. Just due to the fact that Romeo was a 5-star.
Romeo, and yeah. But
again, it's rankings. You want to look at it.
I'm
one
talking about
way,
the overall
really
class, though. How many were in that class?
Yeah, no. Yeah, but the overall, yeah, because they had 4 other 4-stars in that class, or high 3-stars, with Finney.
And who were they?
Demezi Anderson, Rob Finney, Jerome Hunter, Demezi Anderson. I think Clifton Moore may have been part of that class, but
okay, so you only got 2 of those that stayed.
Yeah,
so
just overall in terms, obviously with this class, it's going to be coming in. You look at that, and that's definitely what you would call, a foundation, right? Due to the fact that you don't expect those guys to be transferring out. You obviously don't expect Tamar Bates after this year to stay all 4 weekly, even maybe 3 years. And Jalen Hood-Schifino, probably the same thing. You're seeing maybe 2 years out of both of those guys. Potentially 3 for Hood-Schifino as it looks right now, but overall, I mean, you have to be pretty happy with those 4 guys as kind of that main core group that you have for at least the next 2-3 seasons, without a doubt.
I think that a 2-year expectation should become the norm for fans, especially other than a one and done, which I guess that could be. I don't know that they. Unless it is a special talent and it does something for the shining the star of Indiana, I don't know the point of recruiting one and dones now with the transfer portal when there are guys that are basically going to be senior plus that'll be out there and available. So other than it looking good to land a talent, and again, unless he's a generational talent that is going to be able to be that good, it's so easy just to go to the portal now and find a grad transfer that's really good. But it's actually, if they're a grad transfer, they're probably not great because they would have been gone to the NBA by now. So it's a tricky situation there. But there are just a lot of options now for coaches. They don't have to land these guys, and programs that have I'll mention it, like Kentucky. They're not going to be able to live on one and dones anymore. They're going to have to live on the transfer portal now because they've not developed their own. They've never developed their own talent. They've relied on one and dones. That deal is going to kind of change now, I think. But the portal relaxes that, and they're still just going to go to portal. I think they're going to become a portal team.
And that's honestly kind of what they. Team. Yeah, that's kind of what they did this year. They got four transfers coming in, all super talented guys. A lot from high major programs, and you have Kellen Grady from Davidson as well, 18 point per game scorer. So I mean, I think we kind of trash Calipari for the skill development or kind of lack thereof that he's been able to kind of do at Kentucky. He's just been a terrific recruiter in getting these guys and having them for a year and then getting them off to the NBA. But he has been ahead of the game at times when it comes to kind of what the trend is going to be in the recruiting landscape. And I think he jumped ahead of it a few years ago when he started to kind of land some of these high profile transfers, whether it just be 1 a year, 2 a year, then 3 a year. So he's starting to build his program and his teams a little bit more balanced for upperclassmen. But obviously those upperclassmen don't come the way of staying in Kentucky for 3-4 years. They always are going to be coming from the transfer portal, which is like you said, going to be the new kind of recruiting class that comes in, where I think you're just going to continue to see more and more transfers kind of be top heavy in that recruiting class, whoever that may be. And if you're a program that doesn't actively recruit in that portal and land at least one guy every single year, I think you're going to be very behind the game when it comes to building a top-notch program for multiple multiple seasons.
Let's go give Forrest a shout out. I know he's dealing with some sickness. He's usually on here. He's on here. He's still on here, even though he's battling through. So we appreciate you, Forrest. Get well. Noah Clowney is now the focus, of course, but he's not just Indiana's focus, but it would be a crown jewel in this recruiting, and not to say that he's the best, but when you add him to this class, this class will jump to, I don't know how is this a top 2 class, top 3 class? I'll have to look at the numbers, but I know it would catapult the class, but it would also catapult the talent on the team, but it would catapult Indiana in the eyes of the rest of the recruit. I mean, that to me, that would be the final. It's already tipping in the right direction, in my opinion. I think it started with Tamar Bates, obviously, but then when they went to the Bahamas, even though you couldn't see it, everyone knew it. That continued that with recruits. They see what's going on. They know that Tamar Bates is getting to play, getting to perform, getting to do whatever he needs to do, the opportunities. And so that continues. Now they just landed another great commitment in Jalen Hood-Schifino from Montverde Academy. Noah Clowney would just open the rest of the floodgates, I think.
Yeah, and you look at what that class would provide, and you would check off every single box that you would need out of a recruiting class, and especially check off boxes that Indiana needed. You get a combo guard in Jalen Hood-Schifino, who's one away, for those people who really look at rankings, one away from a 5-star spot. So top 20 player now in the entire class, jumped up 12 spots after he committed earlier this week. But you look at what he's going to be able to provide from the kind of point guard backcourt position, along with everyone else in that backcourt. Then you cross off the wing position with CJ Gunn, who's going to be a multi-year player. Probably someone who's not going to do too much early on in his career, but you look at the second half of that career as a guy who Indiana's faced multiple times, a guy who can shoot the ball, a guy who can score the ball, and a very good kind of two-way player. As an upperclassman, you check off a versatile kind of hybrid forward in Caleb Banks, who can play a little bit of the 3, a little bit of the 4. Still developing that jump shot, but a super athletic, versatile player. Again, very defensive-minded as well. And then you cross off the box of a big man in a top 50 center in Noah Clowney, who is not only a defensive shot blocker, terrific rebounder, but he's really developing his perimeter skills, not to play on the perimeter, but to have the ability to kind of take someone off of the dribble from the top of the key, able to knock down some kind of 15-foot shots that Indiana's really struggled with out of their front court over the past 5 seasons, as we know well. So you look at what they're able to basically just cross off with one class, guys who are going to be there for at least 2 to 3 seasons. And again, we talked about it. That foundation would be 100% cemented with the rest of the roster, assuming next year and the year after. And that's the ideal class that you would want Mike Woodson to reel in his first true recruiting class. And kind of another note on that, you look at all these guys in that class and all these guys that Mike Woodson has landed, only one of them who he's kind of re-engaged into Indiana has been an in-state guy with CJ Gunn, but every single commitment that he's gotten on his own is an out-of-state player. And that just shows you the national recognition that Indiana is now getting in just 4 months.
And I don't think that it didn't go away. It was just not cultivated, and it wasn't able to be cultivated because of what was going on. It's just one of those things that a true blue blood like Indiana, Kansas, Kentucky, those type of schools, they don't go away. It's just bubbling under the surface. Boom. And all it takes is a little water, and you see exactly what's going on, because just go back to Tom Crean's 6-25 season. Assembly Hall was full. There are maybe 3-4 other programs in the United States that could do that with a 6-25 club. Indiana is one of those because of who they are. expectation. Noah Clowney, I can't get a read on him. I don't know if Indiana was a little bit later to the party. I know he really seems to like Alabama, and as a big man, he likes how Alabama runs and gets down the floor. Of course, we saw that last year. I don't know if they led the country in threes, but if they didn't, they should have. But with their new coaching staff, man, they made a big change. They're a player in the game, a big player he's from the South. He's from South Carolina. You've got even Frank Martin in there, but I don't see him going to South Carolina. It just has not done much under him. They did have that one run that year, but Indiana is a program, and Mike Woodson is a guy that he knows, being a big guy, there's a great relationship there. And I think Mike Woodson can use that to his advantage.
Yeah. I mean, you look at the four schools that are kind of in that, Clowney, Indiana, Virginia Tech, Florida, and Alabama. Out of those, I think you look at Indiana and Virginia Tech as kind of the two that stick out, with Alabama as actually the latest school to kind of get into that recruitment. But like you said, they run the type of offense that Noah Clowney would really thrive in, and using very athletic big men. And that's one thing that Indiana show him, because they don't have any tape on what Mike Woodson would bring to the college game. And that's the biggest thing that Noah Clowney's really looking for out of this visit this weekend, is to see exactly where he would play, what kind of system that would be, and really kind of visualize what it would look like. Obviously, he likes having that NBA pedigree as a head coach with Mike Woodson, and he knows the style that he played in the NBA. But I think what we were able to see in the Bahamas with how they played Race Thompson and Trace Jackson Davis as the two big men, really having the freedom to kind of do whatever they want, whether it was grab a rebound, lead the break, whether it was take a three if they wanted to, if it was in the flow of the offense, or, lead a fast break, dish it out to someone for the three, which we saw with Trace Jackson Davis as well. I think that freedom is something that really benefit Noah Clowney. And I think that's one thing that he's really out of this visit, to see exactly what that system would look like under Mike Woodson in college.
And I think that's something it's hugely important getting on campus to see that, and to see Trace Jackson Davis, who is a likely NBA, and the fact that he will be gone most likely to the NBA, his spot needed to be filled. That is another perfect alignment for him to see that. But I think that not having anything to see before is a slight hold up, but not much, because once you get here, that's when they do the best job of showing you, this is what we're going to do for you. This is how we're going to build this around you. You can't even do that but by seeing the offense before. Had he seen it before? So this is actually the best way for him. Is there any talk out there, any leaning? Is it just way too early?
Yeah, I mean, I think you definitely look at what Indiana's been able to do up to this point, right? Without having him on campus, without really having any kind of major college film to show him. I think Indiana has an extremely good chance of landing him. This will be the first official visit for Noah Clowney, so they have the ability to really kind of either put the clamps on the rest of his trips, or put the expectation of what an official visit should look like. And I think Indiana is going to do that. So I think you look at Indiana as one of the two front runners out of the group four. I think another part of it that really is going to benefit Indiana and Noah Clowney is having Caleb Banks on the visit with Noah Clowney as well. So he's going to be taking his senior year official visit. Obviously, he's an Indiana 2022 commit and visited back in June, but he's going to be taking that senior year official. And I think having a commitment who's going to be able to, what that system is going to look like as well. And those two players are going to be able to play off of each other. Those aren't the same position. Those players are going to benefit from one another being on the floor together, and having that other ear of a guy who they have a decent relationship now. They're still trying to get to know each other. That was one thing that Caleb Banks told me that he was excited about being on the visit with Noah Clowney this weekend, is just to continue to build that relationship. But I think you look at that as kind of another recruiter, right? where you're going to have some players, you're going to have the coaches, but now you're also going to have a class of 2022 commit also on the visit with you in your ear, trying to push you and tell you how those two can kind of change the Indiana culture as well. So those are two things that I think really stick out for these visits coming up for Noah Clowney that are slightly underrated, but I think are going to go a long way in ultimately helping Indiana try to land him.
I appreciate you. Alec Lasley from thehoosier.com joining us. Make sure you give him a follow and check him out at thehoosier.com. Man, have a good weekend, and we look forward to everything. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Appreciate it, guys. Take care.
Alec Lasley will be back with more. Dustin Dopirak from the Bloomington Herald is going to be with us next. Make sure we get that out. I got to say that 3 times, so don't get that one wrong. From the Bloomington Herald, baby, Dustin Dopirak up next. Back right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Whether you're looking for...
I'd say the Bloomington Herald, Bloomington Herald, Bloomington Herald.
Bloomington Herald Times, don't forget.
Well, I know, because every time I started to say that, telephone kept jumping into my head, so I stopped and shut up. I'm like going, don't say it. That's like from 1893 or something.
It's not that far back. That was Bob Hamill era. So, you know.
Were they the telephone then? The Times? And
yeah, I don't know when it switched over exactly, but it was definitely it's not that far back. I mean, I don't know if it's the 80s. It might be the 70s, but it's not that. It's not ancient history.
So it's the Bloomington Herald Times.
Mm-hmm.
It's like in Louisville.
I mean, it's going in the same place.
Well, yeah, I knew that. It's like when I was growing up
now, anyway.
Down south, we would get the Southern Indiana edition of the Courier Journal or the Louisville Times.
Yeah. Hold on a second, dog's being an issue. Hey, stop. My bad.
All good, man. How's it going? How's the new gig? It's got to be great.
Good. Yeah, no, it's nice. It's just getting back to something that's normal. So
that's awesome.
Normal has been a long time.
That is just awesome, though, man. Things don't always work out just like that. I was like,
wow,
how did that just work out? Just boom.
It did. I mean, obviously, it the reason it worked out is because John Blau did a phenomenal job. John was good enough to get another thing, but also to make this job worthwhile, to kind of prove to Gannett that it was worth having 2 guys on the beat.
Got to.
So that was
especially one in Bloomington.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that was big. That was really important. So I owe John a lot. Like, I can't act like this is just an accident. Like John had to keep it together when everything was sort of falling apart around him, and he did. So
he was a hell of a writer, man.
For that, I wouldn't have this job. So yeah, certainly. Absolutely.
Changed the Herald Times in 1989. We'll get that up there.
I thought that was right. That makes sense.
How's everything else going?
Good, man. Doing good. Puppy's slightly better trained than she was the last time that I think you had any dealings with her. But
don't worry. We've got
still attacking the couch. So
John's got a Cujo.
Oh my gosh, Jim. She hasn't been a problem in like a month.
No, she hasn't. The beginning, it was Cujo, man.
It was bad. One of the commenters said I should have named her Screech.
You're killing me, Smalls. You're killing me.
All right, we got 10 seconds. Coming back in.
Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer.
Come see us at the all-new Andy Moore Honda, now in Bloomington.
Today's guest is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry of Sellersburg. You need $1 million smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you'll get with Reynolds Family Dentistry.
Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Here's Jim Coyle.
Welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat coming to you here on this Friday. Now joined by Dustin Dopirak from the Bloomington Herald Times. That sounds great to say. Welcome back. And I guess that's welcome back twice because this is your second stint there.
It is, yeah. No, 09 to 14 was there basically, doing the same job. It's obviously going to be different this time, obviously, with ownership changes. And now working with Zach Osterman from the Indy Star, basically it's kind of a combined beat. Not kind of, it is a combined beat. In the old days, we would have, it was competition with the Indy Star. So this is nice to be able to kind of combine forces and get together, and Zach's obviously been one of my closest friends for a really long time, definitely one of my closest friends in the state. So this is really, really cool. It's nice to, be able to put all those pieces together. It's different, but it definitely fits better for what I'm up to right now.
Well, and it's great to have you back on here as well. And what a season this is about to be for the Indiana Hoosiers. We've talked about that, not just in basketball with what's going on, the excitement in football, all the athletics. Mm-hmm. And I know you're mainly focusing on football and basketball, but athletics as a whole right now is at a zenith potentially for Indiana with, if you look at men's and women's soccer, if you look at men's and women's basketball, at football, baseball's playing at a high level as usual. You got swimming and diving coming off of Olympic medals. I don't know that there's ever been a better time for that much of IU athletics. I know that, you've got national titles, but man, we're talking major programs, all of the major programs ranked.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's as far as across the board, it keeps getting better. I mean, obviously, I think everyone will always define Indiana by where men's basketball is, and it's obviously in sort of it's not up in the air. I don't know exactly how to put it, but you're obviously talking about a new administration. You're talking about starting over. You're talking about you're still coming off a season in which you didn't make the tournament. Things are obviously heading in a good direction under Mike Woodson. People got to be happy about that. But I think people will always define Indiana by, okay, well, you got to win in basketball, and I don't know that anybody will really feel like everything is, not headed in the right direction, but anything is at a zenith. I don't think anybody would use that term until they're at least back in the tournament, until they've at least landed that. But I think that's certainly possible with this group. I think there's plenty enough talent for Mike Woodson in his first year to get in. And if that happens, and if Indiana football performs the way that it is, looks like it will, the way it is projected to, if baseball is solid, if soccer does what it generally does, if it sort of continues the momentum it had from last year, if women's basketball does the same, and they certainly should considering everything they have back, then you could absolutely have that conversation. I mean, this might end up being one of the best school years in recent memory, top to bottom. And now, but that is a case of everyone's got to perform to their potential. I mean, and I don't know where baseball is going to be. They obviously got hit pretty hard. They lost their whole starting rotation. I mean, that's no joke. You got to rebuild that. But again, football has a chance to do things it's never done before. Basketball has a chance to get back online. Women's basketball has a chance to be phenomenal. I mean, obviously, an Elite Eight program last year, bringing everybody back. It has a chance to be a really special year for Indiana athletics. A lot of things have come together. Really, a lot of investment more than anything else has come together, particularly in football. I mean, there was a lot of money, obviously because of a lot of the money that came in through the Big Ten Network that dedicated a lot of that money to make sure that Indiana football was finally going to go somewhere. And it has. You're seeing the fruits of that, of the tenacity of deciding to keep it going and saying, I don't care how bad our record is, how bad it's been. We believe that if we keep investing in football, eventually it's going to be worth it. And that has proven out to be the case. They put a lot of money into facilities, training development. So what seems to be coming together right now for Indiana athletics is the product of a lot of time and money.
Yeah, I just wrote down in 4 words while you were talking that all are 4 different things in regards to football. Fans. That I just saw on social media something that there's possibly only 120 tickets left for the Cincinnati game. The fans are getting involved. Certain fans are getting involved in trying to pack the rock, fill Memorial Stadium, which is great to see because, devoid. I'm not trying to give an opinion on that. I remove myself from that, but it's just fun to see. Whether you don't have to be for the team, it's just funner to be in a fun environment covering.
Sure.
I want to cover. It's funner. It's much funner to cover a winner than it is a loser. But it's much more fun to be in a full stadium than it is to be in one with 3,000 people, and just it's like a morgue. But the environment, the electricity that is coming around is crazy, and that could just continue to feed other things. If football is really successful, I really, the craziness that can follow with basketball could be nuts, because you don't need much added to basketball, and if you pour gasoline on that, it's going to be a big old fire.
Right. No, absolutely. I mean, and the obvious element to all of this is the fact that nobody got to watch games last year, because of the pandemic and everything like that. You obviously this great Indiana football season happened, and only a select few people, almost entirely of whom were either media or related to the players, were allowed to be in the building. And so the fact that, fans were forced to miss that, but they have a second chance. Basically, it wasn't a situation because everybody was granted this extra year of eligibility. Almost everybody comes back and they get a chance to run it back. Whereas if they had taken that year of eligibility away, then you have a much different roster. Who knows if it's prepared for something like this, for what they're projected to do, and you get another crack at it. And I think Indiana fans are obviously noticing and saying, hey, we didn't get to see everything special last year except for on our TVs. We want to see it live this time around. And they're going to invest in it. It's a big deal that Cincinnati is a big deal. I think just, out of the however many, there have been sellouts obviously at Indiana, but I think all of them have been Ohio State or Michigan. And I don't know how many years that goes back. I mean, it's probably at least a decade that they've played someone else other than those two major programs in bordering states. That is sold out. Obviously, Cincinnati is a bordering, in a bordering state as well. But Cincinnati is not Ohio State from a longevity standpoint. But that's a really good team. I think that is one of the sleeper best non-conference games in the country. Certainly one that was been, I guess, sort of organically put together, as opposed to one of the, kind of these made for TV beginning of the season games. They've got like Alabama, Miami, and Clemson, Georgia, and those kind of games.
How many people you thought when that game was scheduled anticipated the potential of this being a top 10 matchup?
Right. No, I mean, I think you had to look at it and say, well, hey, it's nice that they're playing Cincinnati. That's a thing, that's playing somebody. But, for Cincinnati to be a top 10 program coming off a year in which they were unbeaten until they went in the bowl game, and Indiana being in this year, you could have never imagined that. Since, I don't know when the last time Cincinnati and Indiana played, but I can't imagine anybody, no one remembers it, I'm sure, because it wasn't, a big deal. This is going to be a big deal. This is going to be one of those games. I think it's going to be a sleeper, one of the, coolest non-conference games in the country this year. And people are coming out to see it. But again, it's sort of the fact that people care, the fact that people notice, just tells you the degree of seriousness with which they're looking at this and saying, hey, this is a chance to see something special, and this is something that everybody has to go see. You have an opportunity. They're looking at it as, Indiana football being a premium ticket is something that you need to go get, and you need to make sure that you're first in line to see some of these games. It says a lot for where the program's going.
And that works the other way. Now, Indiana has become a potential must-see game on the other side. So they also have to go to places like Iowa, Michigan, Penn State. They did not have to face those crowds last year. Now, and I'll use Michigan as the greatest example, because I think that's the team that Indiana probably has the best chance to beat on the road, because they're better. They're just simply better than they are. But 110,000 people changes things. It's a great equalizer.
Mm-hmm. No, it absolutely is. It is going to be a different environment. And again, I think I remember one of the great quotes that I remember seeing last year, and Zach did this piece. I think he talked to Mitchell Page, and Mitchell said that basically, we were always worried about how fans were going to react. Like that was something that was sort of in your mind as an Indiana football player, trying to get to the point that the fans would care, it mattering to you. They were going to come in from the parking lot. He says, these guys will fight you in the parking lot. They don't care. Like they're not interested. It doesn't bother them whether fans are there or not there. These guys just want to play you at football. And I think that's true. I think that's how they're built. That being said, it's different when it goes from you practically are playing them in the parking lot last year, that there are no fans to be discussed or thought about. To now it's a thing again. To now you had 9 months where you had this expectation where everybody's talking about how big of a deal you are. Even if you have that sort of mindset of the earmuffs and blinders mindset that Tom Allen tells them he wants them to have, it's tough to keep that for this whole period and not start to wonder and not start to think in your head about, man, I want people to see this. I want us to matter. I want to be relevant. And have that being something in your mind rather than just thinking like, let's just make the next play. Let's tackle this guy. Let's beat this dude. In a sense, the world created earmuffs and blinders for them last year. And now they have to do it for themselves. They have to be able to tune it out when it's there as opposed to when it's not. When it's maybe in some ways it's easier to tune out an empty crowd when everybody has an empty crowd because no one's allowed to be in the building. So that's going to be different. It is going to be strange to say, again, you're with 110,000 people. There's the noise. Can you block it out? Will you still be able to communicate? Are you ready for that change, that adjustment from going from, like really not having anything that you have to keep out of your ears to it's 110,000 people. You've got to find a way to communicate without being able to shout over that. It is going to be an issue. It's going to be a different environment. It's, I generally think that they're built that way, that they don't care where they play. But it's different when it's Michigan. It's different when that crowd shows up, and they're going to see them coming this year too. I mean, like they're going to go to Penn State and they're going to go to Michigan, and generally, I was a Penn State student. Indiana was not one of those games that we circled on our calendars. Like, man, you better be there and better be awake. Like if you straggled in 5 minutes after kickoff hungover, like you weren't that disappointed in it. You were like, it's Indiana. Like now, I mean, Penn State fans better recognize that that's a game that you circle this year. Like, I mean, for Penn State, that is a game that really tells you what direction you're going to go. So that's true for both of those. Iowa's going to be the same way. Michigan, it's certainly going to be the same way. Michigan, that's not a game they can afford to lose if you're Michigan. You lose that game and you're heading that is another sort of brick that's weighing down Jim Harbaugh, to his end. So these are games that everyone is going to see you coming, and I think they're prepared for that. I think they know about that. But knowing that, being able to articulate it and being aware of that cognitively is different than actually experiencing it and succeeding otherwise. I think they are well built for it, but it is a different game.
The next, I should have combined the next two words I wrote down: talent and transfers. The talent has increased by the staff has developed so much talent here, but the transfers, I think, have also seen that. They've seen the culture. They've come in. Both of those combined have raised Indiana in a much quicker way than I think you can ever raise a program. If the transfer market hadn't happened, Indiana would still be getting better and better, but I don't think they could get this good this fast. Because they've added some key roles in some key spots.
Yeah, I mean, everywhere that they got hit, they addressed it through the transfer portal. I mean, basically, everybody they looked at is, okay, we lost this guy. We can go get that portal. You get DJ Matthews to step in at slot receiver.
I mean, they almost elevated in a lot of those spots.
Yeah, and some of them you do. I mean, and at least you come back even. I mean, you're probably better off at defensive end with Ryder Anderson than anybody you had. You frankly are, because he's, based on all the tea leaves, they haven't sent us a new depth chart. But I mean, Ryder Anderson was at the top of the defensive end depth chart ahead of the returning starter, James Head Jr. So that tells you that is an elevation. I don't know the DJ is going to walk. What's that?
Stephen Carr, rather.
Yeah, Stephen Carr. I mean, is he over Stevie Scott? I don't know, but he certainly, seems to be the, based the way they're talking about it, it does not sound like Tim Baldwin's going to beat him out. Based on everything that we're hearing, I mean, Dylan McCullough said, hey, you'll be surprised at how many carries everybody else gets beyond the featured guy. It's not going to be, I'm not going to hand them 35 or 40 a game and give somebody else 2 or 3. The second guy is going to get some carries. So he's going to have a real role. So it's not like Baldwin is going to be sort of cast to the side and David Ellis is going to also play a role. But Stephen Carr looks like he could be the guy, and maybe he does turn out to be better than Stevie Scott. He's going to be a fifth-year guy. He's got a lot of lessons learned from USC where it didn't go quite as well as was projected, but he's a 5-star recruit. He's a big deal. So
a very different type of runner too. Stevie was more of a power runner. As a matter of fact, talking yesterday, I'm drawing a blank on who we spoke with yesterday. But I asked about learning from Stevie Scott and then watching, I think it was Tim Baldwin, and watching Stephen Carr and some of the things you could take from both of them. And he talked about the power and the of Stevie Scott and the elusiveness of Stephen Carr. So a great combination of those two. And they're very, very different, Carr and Scott. And I think that Indiana just didn't have that breakaway tailback. They didn't have that guy that defenses had to fear.
Home run
Tevin. Tevin Coleman's a once in a generation. Right.
Tevin
exactly.
Coleman home run ability. He gets into that second level, and then he can go. Yeah, exactly. And Carr could be that guy. So you look at him. I think, Jonathan Haynes. They just got. He's not going to start, but he looks like a guy that they could easily fill in there at the safety spot. Jaron Handy is a guy that I've been really impressed with in recent weeks. We got to see a full day of practice. It was the 19th, and he was making some plays. And then after that, they said, Jaron Handy's been a guy. Cameron Buckley, I think over the last couple of weeks, you've seen him really get himself into the mix. And he's going to, I think, push Miles Marshall at that other outside spot. And he's a guy that you can play in a bunch of different positions. There's a lot of dudes that can step up and be a part of this. Zach Carpenter, I don't know if he's going to start, but he's at least part of that interior rotation, that interior depth they're going to have on the front. A lot of good pieces that they've got out of the transfer portal, and they made the most of that. And it tells you, obviously the market changed the way it operates. They're taking advantage of that. They probably wouldn't have had this big of a haul 5 years ago with the rules being the way they were there when you had to sit out. But they took advantage of it. Obviously, like you said, everybody wanted to be a part of that culture.
We got to take a quick break. Dustin Dopirak from the Bloomington Herald-Times is with us right now. We'll be back to more to see what else Dustin's up to. Brought to you by the great folks at Reynolds Family Dentistry in Sellersburg, Indiana. If you're down that way, make sure you go see our good friends, Dr. Jay Reynolds at Reynolds Family Dentistry. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, Hoosier fans. I'm sure it's pretty easy to ask what you are working on, but what are you working on specifically?
I got a car piece coming. I'm working on that. I'm talking to his family. I talked to his mom. I got to talk to his dad. They're an interesting story. His dad was in jail from the time he was 11 until his senior year. I think I read it right. The Bleacher Report had already done this story. Mirren Fader, the woman who wrote the Giannis biography, that's like top 10 in New York Times book sales or something like that. She's really, really good. But I think, he was in jail for like marijuana sales or something like that.
Gee whiz.
A number of years that you're like, what, you got 7 for that?
For something that's going to be freaking legal in the entire country.
Exactly.
Soon.
In a minute, if he started his business right now, he's an entrepreneur there. He has to spend 7 years in jail during his kids' formative years. So that's pretty brutal. But yeah, no. So basically, like, it's my sort of angle is sort of taking it to the next level and saying, all right, well, it was a big deal for him to get to play in front of his dad, because like he kept sending him, he sent him clips and everything like that. He had like a scrapbook in jail, and then he got to actually see him at USC and he was family and everything like that. But it's like, okay, how hard was it to step away from that and saying, okay, like I'm going to go do this on my own. And he said it, I think when we talked to him the first time, that it was just about the ability to just step aside and just focus on you and not have to think about family, not have to think about friends, not have to think about like LA, just be able to isolate and go and just focus. And so it's like, okay, like what's that been like? And it's been, they're a terrific family too. His mom's awesome. So I can talk to his dad later today. So I'm looking forward to that.
And they're still out in Southern California?
They are, but they're going to come. They're one thing that Shonda pointed out, that his mom pointed out that I hadn't even thought about, is a lot of Indiana's games are paired up. So it's like 2 in a row. So she can come down for one Saturday, stay for the other Saturday, and catch a couple games without having to do, like
trouble. Yeah.
However many
That's
home
awesome.
games they have, you cut the flights in half. Because, and
That's
I hadn't thought
amazing.
about that, but she's right, is that because it's Idaho and Cincinnati in consecutive weeks. Then it's, I think, Michigan State and Ohio State. And then I think then they go to, Maryland and Michigan, and then they come back and play Rutgers and Minnesota.
Yeah.
So they have, I think they've got 6 home games, and they're each paired up. They're 2 together.
10 seconds, come back.
That works
Then
out pretty
stay
nice.
for dinner at Sam's Clubhouse. Sam's Restaurants, professionals in the art of food and drink.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. Pizza, burgers, beer.
Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Here's Jim Coyle.
Welcome back and happy Friday. Dustin Dopirak from the Bloomington Herald Times is sitting with me right now. Earlier we were talking about Indiana basketball, but there is football rather, but plenty to talk about. But we were in a break. You told me you're working on a Stephen Carr piece, and he's an amazing piece to this team because Rick Bozich, asked a question right before me yesterday, and it really opened up my mind. He talked about, he's coming from that vaunted line of being a USC tailback.
Right.
Man, that goes back to O.J. Simpson and the greats. I mean,
Marcus Allen.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
Mike Garrett.
I can just see those guys running in those games. And now you're coming to Indiana. He played in the Rose Bowl and stuff, those stadiums. Not that Indiana doesn't, players don't get to do those things, but it's a different Southern California to Bloomington. That's just a difference. But sometimes that's just the difference people need. And I think this may be exactly what Stephen Carr needs.
Right, exactly. I mean, he obviously he grew up a little bit east of the city in Fontana, and so Fontana is just all big part of that huge Southern California metropolis where it's just highways forever, and it takes you an hour to get across the street sometimes. I mean, it is but it was home, and he had family coming to games all the time, and friends were there, and his high school program is not far away, and it's just basically he obviously goes there with all of the hype that he had being a 5-star guy, and never really being able to take over the starting job. He made contributions at that program, but I don't think he ever ran for more than like 380 yards in a season. Never had more than 81 carries in a season. I think that was his high. There's always going to be talent. USC is always going to be able to get tailbacks to come in, especially from California, and you're all fighting each other, and it was tough. He never really won those battles. Had injuries as well. I think there was plantar fasciitis. There might have been a knee, there might have been a quad. He had all kinds of physical issues. It's a tough position. It's running back. That's you're out there to get the crap beat out of you, and he did. So I think it is one of those deals, and he's addressed this a couple times in his interviews. I mean, he loves USC. He still does. I mean, he wore USC shorts to the press conference yesterday, and it's just, he views himself as an alum, but he also sees this opportunity as a chance to really isolate and be away from all that, be away from all the hype, be someplace separate. I think you asked the question about yesterday about is it a different kind of pressure, being, coming in as BMOC, because you're the guy from USC. It is your job to, you are considered the guy that's supposed to be the tailback, and everybody's going to look at you like you are a 5-star. You're supposed to be the guy. Like you are supposed to fix this, running game that wasn't that great last year. Is there pressure with that? And he said, pressure makes diamonds. You have to expect pressure. That's part of it. But he is able to kind of step away and not have, responsibilities that are not football and school. Obviously he's already got his bachelor's degree. He's going to, pursue a master's in something, and I don't know if it's really important to him to get a master's or anything like that. So he's just going to be taking classes, and, but he gets to focus. He just gets to be on him. He doesn't have to, go check in on, his family and go check in on his friends in LA and everything like that. And be, surrounded by just all of the distraction that is. He is, this feels like, really going away to a boarding school for him. It is a different place. He's never really been away from home. He could always get home to his mom in an hour. Now he's by himself. His mom's going to come to games for sure, and that's that. I'm sure he's excited about that. He loves family. He is a very loyal guy, but this allows him to sort of step away and just focus on him and just focus on what he needs to do. And I think he badly wants to be a professional football player, and he knows it requires more than he's proven so far. He's got to have a big year. He's got to produce. He's got to prove to the NFL that, he can be a featured back and he can be a guy that can do everything for you. But he can be a guy that you can rely on and just hand him the football. He does a lot of other things well. He was a guy that's a high school kid. He's a 5-star recruit. I mean, they put him on field goal protection team. And like he is down for that kind of thing, and that's what you can be successful at the next level, is be able to go play special teams on top of your offensive or defensive role. But this gives him a real chance to focus on everything he needs to do to get to the next level, and do it with Dylan McCullough, who is his favorite running back coach so far. So it works out for him in a lot of ways.
And he knows that Dylan McCullough knows the path to get there, knows what it takes to be there and stay there. And there's probably nothing more dangerous than a guy who is set in his goals of where he wants to be, of getting to that next level. That's exactly what Indiana needs in that running room. The running game, I've said it many times, it hasn't hurt Indiana's offense, but it just has not helped Indiana's offense. It just not done anything. It's just been there. So by not helping, it kind of has hurt. It hasn't really provided any relief. You have to be more of a throwing team, which with Michael Penix, you can be if he's healthy. But, man, if you can get some of that balance, that is going to be the difference to me, to making Indiana a team that is compatible with virtually anybody. And I don't want to put them up there with Alabama and Clemson and those guys, but to get up there, we saw what they could do against Ohio State last year. Right. So we know they're competitive, but it's just getting past a few mistakes and being consistent. But that's what it takes. You have to have all phases of the game, right? Running game, everything. So
right. No, absolutely. You got to be, this season is really a reset for everybody. And particularly in the Big Ten, you look at some of the programs they were able to beat last year, they have to expect that the bar is higher. Particularly they beat Penn State by 1. They have to expect a much better Penn State team than they saw a year ago. And if they're going to beat Penn State this year, they have to be able to run the ball against them to some degree. They obviously were able to get by almost entirely on the pass last year in that game. I'm trying to think what they even ran for, but they're going to need to be able to throw the ball against it. They're going to be able to need to run the ball. They're going to be able to have to at least sort of keep some pressure off of Penix, basically, to not just be everybody able to pin their ears back. As Forrest Gregg points out on our chat here, it definitely did hurt them in the bowl game, not being able to establish a running game. They were able to put the ball in Stevie's hands in some pass plays to get him out on some screens, as I remember, but they really didn't have much of a running game. So you got to have some balance. You got to be able to trust that to some degree. You don't have to overwhelm everybody with it. You don't have to be a team that runs for 250 a game, but you got to be mid hundreds at least, 150, something like that. I mean, they were averaging 108, and obviously they weren't getting that every time. So they're going to need more of that, more production, and you're just going to have to be able to honor it at the very least, to know that it is something that is a way that Indiana can beat you, is be able to run the football. So that is really key. And again, like they're going to face some teams that are tougher than they faced a year ago. They're going to face a better Penn State team than they saw. They're going to face a better Michigan team than they saw. They're going to face an Iowa team that they didn't play. They're going to face a Cincinnati team that can really get after you. So to win those types of games, let alone beat an Ohio State, just step up and win that kind of game, there's got to be a running game there. They're going to be able to throw the ball against just about everybody. They've got the talent at the receiving on the perimeter. They've got probably going into the season at least the best quarterback in the Big Ten. But you cannot just throw the ball and expect to win games like those consistently.
Switching gears a little bit, on the basketball side, just had another commitment from Jalen Hood-Schifino, a commitment that puts Indiana in a top 8 recruiting class for the country. They're not done yet, of course, but Schifino, a great get. Talked to one of his coaches, Ray Miller, the other day on here, and you can tell that, and I already had this thought, but the kids that come out of there, they're professionally minded. And by professionally minded, I mean in every sense of the word, as a person in every way. How they carry themselves, how they look at life, is they just are. And he talked about Jalen being a great leader. And I can, the things that kids like that bring to a team are immeasurable. Now the next target is Noah Clowney. Where's that going to go? We don't know. That's going to be a tight recruitment, but that would put a crown jewel in Mike Woodson's recruiting class so far.
Yeah, it absolutely would. And to, like it, and it's a tough assignment, this particular class, putting it together, as he is. I mean, he has one holdover from the state. But I mean, if you look at, Archie Miller and Tom Crean, when they started, when they got going, they were able to get a couple from the state, just kind of, and also carry over recruitments that they were already doing. Like Tom Crean was in, was at Marquette, and he was already going after Maurice Creek and Christian Watford. Those were targets he already had when he was at Marquette. He comes in, and Jordan Hulls is here. He's at Bloomington South, and basically it's like if you can show that you have a competent program, you can get Jordan Hulls, and that becomes a foundational piece for you. And so not that, I mean, you got to work really hard in recruiting to get whoever you're going to get. So that's not to downplay, what Crean was able to do in his first major class, but all the same, I mean, that he had some of the work. There was a little bit of work done, by himself, by his staff, but also just by virtue of being in Indiana. Archie Miller obviously is able to, 3 of his first 5 in that 2018 recruiting class that doesn't produce the way it was supposed to, but at least gets them established and says that, hey, they're going to get players. 3 of those 5 guys are in state, and Jerome Hunter is from next door in Ohio. But you're able to get Romeo. You have an in with Romeo Langford because you're there. You're Indiana. You're his home school. It's a place that he's got to consider. Rob Finney the same way. Mike Woodson's able to step in here with having no personal recruiting experience as a college guy. Obviously, he has Kenya Hunter, who still had a lot of his connections, and that helps a lot. But he has one holdover that Archie Miller landed in CJ Gunn, and probably if he gets Clowney and Hood-Schifino and Banks, that's 3 guys from the Southeast. That's 3 guys that, like, Indiana is not naturally on their radar. You've got to go hustle and get them yourself. That's stuff that comes from personal connections. Yusir Rosemond obviously had relationship with Caleb Banks. Kenya Hunter had maintained his relationship with Hood-Schifino. Obviously, Archie Miller was already targeting him. And Noah Clowney was a Rosemond guy. So to be able to land it that way, to be able to land your foundational class from almost entirely outside the state, and at a time when you really needed to, because they were just sort of behind on that class in the state, basically, they got Gunn. That's important. I think CJ Gunn's going to be a really good player. But there was only so much depth in this class. The best player in it is going to North Carolina and Jalen Washington. So it is not one of those years where there's just all this talent in Indiana, and if you could just land your in-state guys, you've got a loaded class. You just have to plant your flag in the state, and then you're established. This was the one where they really had to go outside. They had to hustle. They had to beat national programs to get these guys, and they got them. And that really says a lot for Mike Woodson and for this whole staff. There's a bunch of guys that have never worked together before. I don't think there's any connection between the 4 of them. And just by virtue of hustle and selling good products. Sorry.
It's all right. He's telling you it's time to. He's telling you. I think he said it's break time.
it seems like that's what Maxie was trying to say. Bottom line.
It's perfect.
The amount of hustle they put in to get these players says a lot about them for sure.
Well, man, I can't thank you enough, Dustin. Look forward to it. Look forward to talking to you again next week. I hope you have a great weekend. And thanks a lot for taking for jobs. And congrats on the new gig with the Bloomington Herald Times.
Appreciate it, Jim. Thanks so much for having me.
We'll see you soon, brother. Dustin Dopirak joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. We're back with Mike Farrell, Rivals national football columnist, right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Whether you're looking for...
Well, that dog was dead on time. He said it is time for a break, and break. He was right. Hey, Mike, how are you, sir?
Good. That guy can talk.
Oh, my dude. Yeah, Dustin used to co-host with me, and I'm like, holy cow. It's, he talks, and he's a writer that talks like he writes, I think, but he's a great, very informative. He just got so much information, but how you been?
I've been good. How are you?
Doing fine. Oh, you're in UK. You're up in Connecticut.
Yeah, I'm in Connecticut.
Doing well, I think. Tons of content, loading it up, getting ready to get involved in this NIL world. That's a weird thing. But yeah, it's opening up some opportunities. Are there anything specific that Rivals is doing? I know that SI did some specific things that I won't talk about here, but
no, Rivals says, I don't know.
Yeah, I know the word is yeah, I know.
It's a little bit lacking up top.
Yeah.
Leadership wise. We should be doing a ton of NIL stuff, but I'm not fighting that battle anymore.
Right. Yeah, I guess we'll have to fight it on the front.
Listen, when things change, they change, but my goodness, I've been banging my head against the wall for a long, long time. So I'm just getting through each day and trying to write as much stuff as I can and moving on to the next day.
Where are you in Connecticut?
I'm near the airport, so I'm in Windsor. It's north central, so it's north of Hartford. I'm 30 minutes from UConn, but UConn sucks, so it doesn't matter.
I don't think Connecticut is a state that I have not been into, unless
not missing
I
much.
went through it when I was in college. I got out with Providence.
Okay.
But eventually to Boston, but a buddy of mine lived in Providence and I was in college. And I remember this was back when you could still buy an airplane ticket out of the paper. Someone had bought a ticket that they couldn't use for $75. I bought a round trip ticket to New York City. I'm like, hey man, I'm gonna come up and visit you. So I flew to New York and hopped a bus over to Providence. So that's the only time I've been through Connecticut.
We've got ESPN and we got casinos. We got some of the biggest casinos in the world, and that's it.
It's coming back.
Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer.
Come see us at the all-new Andy Moore Honda, now in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Here's Jim Coyle.
Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you here on this Friday. I hope you've had a great week, ready for the weekend, and hopefully we can get you ready for that. Mike Farrell, Rivals national football columnist, joins us now. Mike, how are you, sir?
Good, doing good.
It is, it's time, man. Kickoffs are around the corner. Tomorrow, I guess, we kick off week 0, which looking forward to that. Talked a lot about this week. We do a lot of Big Ten stuff. So the game there that we've looked at bigger mostly is Scott Frost and going against Illinois for obvious reasons. He's on the hot seat for a couple different reasons, but you got Brett Bielema. So you got a lot of storylines there. You normally a lot of storylines for a game that normally most people wouldn't care about.
No, and it's an interesting line too, with Nebraska favored by 7. So we're going to see a whole lot of ground and pound from Bielema as usual. They've got some talented offensive linemen and running back. And I don't know. I feel Illinois is going to cover that, and Nebraska better win it. I mean, if they lose to Illinois out the gate, it's going to get really ugly very, very fast.
Yeah, I talked about that because you've got he's already with the issues of not winning, but now you have the recent issues of the off the field stuff and a new AD. So those are a lot of ingredients that are not in Scott Frost's favor.
And he was successful at Oregon as a coordinator. He had tremendous success at UCF. He tried to bring all of that to Nebraska, and it's just different. Like, you can recruit West Coast athletes at Oregon, you can recruit Southeast athletes at UCF, but getting kids to go to Lincoln, Nebraska, he tried to recruit Florida. A bunch of those kids that committed have already transferred or just didn't show up. It's just a very difficult place to recruit, especially, when you're not allowed visits and during COVID. So they've been up against it, and it's been very disappointing because I thought he was going to help bring them back. I'd like to see them at least at the Pelini years, 9 wins, because that fan base is very exciting. But it's just been awful, and I really don't see the talent on the team to make a difference this year. So I think it's going to be 6-6 at best.
Yeah, I think they would love to have Bo Pelini back right now, and his 9 wins a year. I know that's what the surprising thing.
Not overly nice. He's not an overly nice person, and his personality kind of let him out there. But yeah, they would love to have those wins back.
Another game we paid a little bit of attention to, UConn at Fresno. UConn, speaking of which, at Fresno State, because you've got Kalen DeBoer, Indiana's most recent offensive coordinator, who left a year ago to become their head coach. So just paid attention to that. UConn, not very good, obviously. Fresno State is 27.5-point favorite in that game.
Yeah, and take Fresno State. UConn's horrendous.
Oh, man.
I mean, they didn't play last year at all, of course, and they're just awful. They could give up record amounts of points.
And there's not a lot of other games this weekend, just a few other games. But the next week, the regular season starts. What we're really looking forward to, Big Ten, Indiana and Iowa kicking off against each other. This is the second time in a couple of years Indiana has opened up the season against a Big Ten opponent, and they'll do it again in a few years. It's the first time since 1979 that Iowa has. And ironically, it was against Indiana back then, against Lee Corso. But this is a different Indiana team, and I don't know exactly what the Iowa team has right now. They're always well coached. They're always solid, but they also always kind of come out of the gate slow. So that's a couple of things that could play into Indiana's favor. You got Michael Penix, question marks there, but from everything we've seen, heard, he's ready to go. Can he stay that way? But Indiana seems like a very, very complete team right now.
Yeah, and that's going to be a good game because Iowa is as well, except for the quarterback position. You've got some questions about Spencer Petras and how effective he can be if he's taken a big step forward. I'm not sure because he's going to have to because he wasn't very good last year. But again, the offensive and defensive lines are solid. The defense is gritty. They got Tyler Goodson in the backfield, so they'll run the ball well. I think this is a really interesting matchup because this is important for both teams because I believe Iowa has Iowa State the following week. And if they lose to Indiana and lose to Iowa State, 0-2 is not the start expected for a team that's supposed to challenge for the West. And Indiana, expectations are as high at Indiana as I've ever seen them in my 25 years of doing this. And how are they going to handle that pressure? They've got the talent on the roster to win games like this. They got the coach, but how are they going to handle the expectations of almost, being favored in more games than their underdogs?
Yeah, that's and now when we talked about the fact that this season, different than last, a great success last season for Indiana, the fans are back in the stands this year. At home, Indiana has not always had a great fan presence, but from what we've been seeing, sales have been going very briskly. But then when you have to go on the road, Iowa's the first place you have to go. 70,000 rabid fans who were not able to go to a game last year. You've got to go to Michigan. You've got to go to Penn State. Those are going to be rough places to play without question.
Yeah, but it's going to be great. I mean, it's so much fun just thinking about having 70,000 people at Iowa, and thinking about the excitement around Indiana football with ticket sales at the highest level ever. You know, a whiteout at Penn State. It's just finally good to see, because last year was such a disaster. And teams weren't really able to showcase how good they were. I mean, you know, there's a lot of players on this Indiana team that nobody knows about, even though they were nationally, you know, lauded and given accolades. You know, the Ohio State game was really kind of the only game that people saw Indiana play, I think. And you know, this is their chance to sort of break out and make some noise. It was shocking to me. I'm not an Indiana football expert, okay? You know, I've been covering football for 25 years. Indiana has not been a focus in recruiting or nationally. So this is the first time I've really dug in, and they've never won 10 games in the season since the late 1800s. I mean, that astonishes me, and this could be the year they do it, but it's going to be a tough road.
Absolutely. And I think that's Indiana fans, they get upset a lot of times, I think, with the national pundits because they go along with what they've seen. And until that changes for more than a season, that's not going to change many of their minds. And not being closer to the program, I think it takes a little bit longer, but that's the truth. You have history to look at. This is an Indiana team that I think, for once, there is no one on their schedule that they are not capable of beating, and that includes Ohio State. Part of that's because they're going to have them at home, and part of that's because there's questions for Ohio State at quarterback. We'll know more as the season progresses, but Indiana has the tools they need. That's 6 weeks down the road, which you have to worry about Iowa first. And so you'll have plenty of tests before they get there. Hell, they've got an early season in their third game with Cincinnati that I promise you, when that game was scheduled, no one expected the potential of it being a top 10 matchup.
No, and there's a question, you know, a legit question. Now, I think the answer is Ohio State, but who's the best team in Ohio? And it's a legitimate question because Cincinnati could very well be. There's certain teams that I've started to look at, and again, it's a good sign for the fans that, you know, people like myself are looking at Indiana. They shouldn't be upset we haven't been, because there's been no reason to. Now we're paying attention, and I cover the draft as well, and there's not a very, very sexy draft history with Indiana, and they don't have anybody that you could really say, oh, wow, this guy was great in the NFL. I mean, it's really alarmingly bad. You know, when you've got Antoine Randall probably is your most famous player, and I can't remember the last time a first-round pick came out of Indiana. So when you have talented guys like Freifogel, you know, Michael Penix, a quarterback who's not, you know, he's not an off-the-charts NFL prospect, but he's a very, very good college player. Micah McFadden, Tywan Mullen. I mean, these are guys that when I'm doing my draft scouting, I'm paying attention to. We could have a first rounder or a couple second rounders on this team, and that's just not normal either. So it's fun to watch teams like Cincinnati, like Indiana, because you know, at the top, of course, it's always the same. And it does get tiresome. You know, lately it's been Alabama or Ohio State or Clemson or, you know, Oklahoma. It'd be nice to see somebody break through and really, you know, surprise. We saw Minnesota do that a few years ago. They didn't get all the way there. But Indiana, you know, they need to put together a great season this year to keep that momentum going, because recruiting is going pretty well as well.
Yeah, and that's the one good thing we can say. You mentioned Minnesota, is they were rising, and then they took that dip where during Tom Allen, Indiana has just been on a steady rise. They've been able to continue to go up. They have some blips. They've lost both of their bowl games, neither of which should they have lost, but they did lose both of those, and that's a knock. You've got to get past that. I think part of that was the coordinator situations. Both times they were losing a coordinator to a head coaching job, but they've got to get past that and continue to elevate at the end of the season and win, beat an SEC team, do something to put that in the minds of other people.
Yeah, and bowl games to me, I mean, you know, maybe 15 years ago, 20 years ago, losing a bowl game was like a disappointment. And nowadays with, you know, so many players opting out so many rosters depleted, so many coaches moving. Unless it's a playoff game, losing a bowl game to me doesn't really matter. I mean, Michigan's lost bowl games repeatedly under Jim Harbaugh. And the reason is that everybody says, well, we don't care about that. All we care about is the Big Ten and going to the playoff. And, anytime the SEC loses a bowl game, they always make the excuse that we're just not into it. I prefer the consistency in the regular season, and I like the progress that they've made under Tom Allen. I like the fact that he's their coach and he's not going anywhere. I mean, that's something that they could feel really, really good about, because I'll tell you, the Matt Campbells of the world and those guys constantly getting offers. I'm sure Tom Allen's had people reach out to his agent, but I don't think they get very far at all. And he's in it for the long haul in Indiana. He's building a toughness. There's a character about this football team. And again, recruiting is rising. So, I do see Indiana as, replacing Michigan State in the East. Michigan State made the playoff. Michigan State has pulled off some big victories over Ohio State and Michigan if they can be Michigan State, I think Indiana fans would be extremely happy. They're not going to be Ohio State, just the way it is. But if they can be Michigan State in that East, that's good.
Yeah, and now that brings into to question not so much realignment, but realignment partially because the Big Ten has divisions currently that don't really matter, because it doesn't matter who you lose to. It all counts in whether you win the division or not. The realignment has been all that talked about. And then yesterday it comes out that there's a game between the SEC and the Pac-12 set up, the big news. So it's like, okay, no one seems to know anything about what they're doing, including those in the alliance.
Nah, and it's all knee-jerk reactions, I mean, obviously Texas and Oklahoma were planning to leave the Big 12 since December of last year, I heard. They did a good job of keeping that very quiet. And now it's just knee-jerk reactions. What do we do? Oh my gosh. The one conference that has to do nothing is the Big Ten. They make more money than the SEC. I mean, they're just making tons of money. They've got a good geographical layout. As we move more from cable boxes to streaming, the fan bases are fine. They don't need to panic. But, man, those divisions just aren't fair. I look at Mike Lasley getting hired at Maryland and Greg Schiano getting hired at Rutgers, right? And those are two good coaches and guys that I like. They have no chance.
I was going to say, how much of a chance do they even have, though?
They have none. And so you remember when the Indianas of the world were trying to break through, you had the Big Four. You had Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, and Michigan State. All four of those programs were consistent 9-10 win teams. All of them, potential playoff contenders. There was no room for anybody else to move up. So, that's why I say Michigan State. I mean, I'm sure Indiana fans would love for me to say Ohio State. Just not realistic. But pop Indiana into a different division. I mean, that West is wide open. So, it's interesting to see if they do change those up at all, or if they do add two more teams and come up with some sort of different alignment. But right now, I think Indiana's in pretty good shape in the division they're in and doing a really good job.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to make any change anytime soon, because it's not a lot coming out of the Big Ten. And I think they're worried more about what's going on with the future. Then we've got the future of the potential expansion of college football playoffs to 12. That is probably something I see that definitely has to happen and will happen. But when that does, contracts and all that, you've got one group that says, no, we need to let this contract run out, and the other one would like to do it now. Is that part of the reason for the alliance to get to that sooner? To Pac-12 does not get any love. Have they even played in the tournament in the final in a college football playoff? Has there been a Pac-12 team? Washington make it in once?
Washington made it once. They got throttled by Alabama, and then Oregon made it once early at the very first year, but not since then. And they need USC to step up and obviously make the playoff. But people are caring less and less about the Pac-12. So this is a Pac-12-led movement. The ACC needs it because they've got a bad contract, TV contract that they're stuck in till 2036, and they can renegotiate that, but they have to make some changes and moves. I don't know why the Big Ten's involved. Because again, like I said, financially they're in such a tremendous position, but I do think that they want more carryover games. I think there's a lot of interest in Ohio State and Oregon this year, Washington and Michigan this year. The issue is where are your cupcake games going to come from if you have this alliance? You've got to play your in-conference games. None of those are easy. And then you're playing Power 5 football. Where are your cupcakes? You need
because the Big Ten is one of the conferences that plays 9 conference games. That's another disparity that Pat Fitzgerald talks about a lot. You've got the SEC that's only playing 4. The ACC, I assume, only plays 4. Does anyone else play 9 besides the Big Ten?
No, there's talk of the SEC now. Once Oklahoma and Texas get over there, it'll probably be 9. There's still a lot of in-conference football. I mean, the Big 12 obviously doesn't have enough teams to pull that. But 9 is a lot when you have 3 games of wiggle room, right? And 2 of those games could be against a Power 5 team in an alliance. It's very, very difficult because you need those 3 wins. I mean, just to get to bowl game status sometimes if you're not having a great season. But it's better for college football because the cupcake games nobody cares about. I mean, you look at the schedule for Indiana. You mentioned the Cincinnati game. I mean, yeah, they scheduled that before Cincinnati was very good, but that's a fun game. That's going to be great.
Yeah.
And it's great.
Great television.
Washington, Michigan's going to be fun to watch. I mean, as an East Coast guy, we don't get to see those. I mean, I do because I have to stay up till whatever to watch a football game on demand, but a lot of people don't get to see Washington. A lot of people don't get to see Oregon, and they get to see them against Ohio State and Michigan. It's fun, but you're going to see a lot more in-conference games. I mean, the way the divisions are set up in the ACC, you've got your crossover games and you've got your in-division games. So everybody plays like 7, but 9's a lot.
And then you've got Notre Dame, who is a quasi member of the ACC, and the ACC that is a horrible football conference right now with only Clemson. Miami didn't come to be. Louisville was a flash in the pan. I don't want to say a flash in the pan, but Florida State, turned under. Horrible. Virginia Tech, they just don't. They used to have some solid programs, and now they're just devoid of good teams. So that has got to be a bad look for the ACC.
Yeah, Notre Dame's not going to join the ACC. Notre Dame, obviously, Swarbrick was on the committee that started this talk of a 12-team playoff, and if you're not a conference champion, you can't get a bye. And at first, I'm like, oh, why did he agree to that? But then I thought about it. It's like they retain their independent status, right? They don't have to share any money with anybody. They also, if they do make that 12-team playoff, are likely hosting a game in whatever you want to call it, the quarterfinals or whatever. You got the 4 byes, then you got 8 teams playing. You assume Notre Dame is probably going to be a host, at least more often than not, for one of those playoff games. If they finish like 7, 8, 9, that's more revenue, more money, and a bye is really not going to help them because once they get up to the Alabamas and the Clemsons of the world, they get beaten pretty bad anyway. So I think it's a good deal for Notre Dame to stay independent and make a ton of money. And they're going to remain, it wouldn't shock me to see somebody like USC break off from the Pac-12 and go independent if the Pac-12 continues to be irrelevant, because being in a conference in the Pac-12 doesn't help anybody. And that's why I'm surprised they said no expansion. They just announced that, yesterday? That's crazy. They have to add teams. They want to get into that central time zone. They should add 2 Texas teams and bring that market to the Pac-12 and extend their reach to the middle of the country. And there's just no foresight sometimes at these conferences. It's crazy. Like that ACC deal for 2036 is look great, yeah, but you don't lock yourself in for 20 years to a TV contract when every 4 years you renegotiate it and you make like $1 billion more.
Yeah, it's a little surprising there. What are you expecting for any surprises for this football season?
Let's see. I've got Ohio State and Wisconsin in the Big Ten title game, so no surprise there. I've got Clemson and UNC in the ACC title game. No surprise there. I think the SEC is going to be interesting. Obviously, you got to pencil Alabama in there. Texas A&M can give them a run. Georgia has a lot of expectations and pressure on them in the SEC East. They better win it. But the SEC East has Florida, an improved Kentucky team, a dangerous Missouri team. So that's no cakewalk there. And then the Pac-12 is Oregon and USC. So surprises, I wish I had a few. I wish there was like, and in the Big 12, it's Oklahoma. I wish I had a team that could break through. People are hoping for like an Iowa State or somebody like that to break through. I just don't see it happening. I still think it's going to be the powers that be, and the playoff teams are going to be 4 teams that we've already seen in the playoff.
Indiana at Iowa, what do you think is going to happen there? I'm not necessarily asking for a prediction, but what are your expectations of that game?
Oh man, I like both football teams. I really do. I think, Iowa's at home, so I don't know the line yet, but I know they're probably going to be favored by 2 or 3 points. It really depends on Penix and how healthy he is, and if he's the Michael Penix we saw last year that can dominate people. I want to say Indiana will win because I think Iowa could be looking ahead a little bit to Iowa State, but man, that's a toss-up. That's going to be come down to a last-second field goal type of game.
There you go, and we'll look forward to that, Mike. Look forward to talking to you again as the season progresses, man. Make sure you give him a follow at Rivals Mike. He is the national columnist for Rivals College Football. I can't thank you enough, brother.
All right. Anytime.
Have a great day, Mike. Farrell,
you too.
Join us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. We got a lot more coming up just to finish the show out, and we'll be back with it here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
Hey, Hoosier fans, whether you're looking for a new or a used vehicle.
Whenever I accidentally forget to click the little sounder before we go to the actual commercial, it throws me off. I'm like, why the hell did I click that button? But it's not a big deal.
Not a big deal.
It just throws me off.
I got to thank him. Thank you. Where is he? Okay. That's been pretty good so far, huh?
It has been. I feel like this is the first day we haven't had guest problems in a while.
It's because I got them set up last night. Ooh. Need to get Mike on like every other week or something.
Yeah, that'd be good. Especially, well, I don't know what your regular guests look like for football season coming up, but you can keep having him on Fridays since Fridays are normally light.
That'll probably change. Monday, we got Promote Don Fisher's coming Monday.
That's right. Donnie's coming back. Charlie Miller's back with us permanently on Mondays.
Here comes the sun, doo-doo-doo-doo.
So we're pretty much loaded on Mondays now. You also have Jim Reamer.
A lot of basketball.
But you have other days that are more football oriented, like Thursday.
Yeah, but the thing is, Monday coming off of a Saturday football game, we're going to mix some football. Well, Don will cover. Don's covering football. What am I talking about? Don's covering football.
Your brain just thinks Don Fisher is more of a basketball, which, I mean, obviously that's where he's known mostly. So
well, because it was all Reamer, Charlie, and Fish, so it just kind of went together there for a second.
Yeah.
So I just need to add a football in there, and then booyah, that's covered. Yo.
Are you going to get anyone different for this coming Tuesday since DeCourcy's out?
Remind me of that, and that one.
All right.
Richard Fant would be good.
Oh, yeah. He's an interesting guy. All right, bring us back in.
Bloomington, then stay for dinner at Sam's Clubhouse. Sam's Restaurants, professionals in the art of food and drink. This segment is brought to you by Remax Advanced Realty, Indie Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Here's Jim Coyle.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, brought to you by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. If you're looking for a home in the Indy area, make sure you check out Cheryl Sizemore from Remax Realty. You can find her information on our page. What's going on? What are you guys doing this weekend? Oh, boy, sometimes you got it in late there. Oh, he put it up. Got waving the flag. Almost got it in late. Yesterday was early. Day before that, barely made the deadline. See, week 0 this week in football. High school games tonight. Any second, week 2. I'm not sure if there are any of the big games that are loaded up. Cal Neddenrup's on with us each Wednesday. We talk about those. Of course, in each area, whether you're in Evansville, Fort Wayne, we have Dylan Sin with us from Fort Wayne on during the week. He talks about that. And, of course, we're on down in Evansville. Lots of great games down there, man. Need to start getting what's his name on from down there. Talk about what's going on in the Southwest. And then, of course, down in the Southern Indiana, you got New Albany, Floyd Central, Jeffersonville, all those guys. Jeffersonville probably playing their first game this week as they had to cancel last week. But if you got a high school game you can get to, go out and support it. Check it out. This is, let's see. What are your favorite games? Anybody going out to see a game? I know a lot of guys are going camping. I've seen. Chris asking about Winnemac being ranked. Are they 1A? I know they're way up north. I remember. I think they're a 1A school, aren't they? They used to be ranked a lot, didn't they? What does week 2 have in store? It's a good question. Area schedule for the India area. Chittard is at Warden Central. Cascades at Beech Grove. Cathedrals at Brownsburg. That should be a game right there. I think that Cal Neddenrup probably talked about that one. Let's see. Christmas Addicts at Monroe Central. Trying to look at some of the other ones. Edgewood at Monrovia. Edinburgh at Cloverdale. Fishers at Pike. Some of these are Greenwoods at Indian Creek. Greenwood got hammered by Bloomington North last week. Kit Klingelhofer's grandson is the quarterback for North. It's tearing it up, man. He dude's throwing some stats out. Mooresville's at Danville. Martinsville's at Bloomington South. A little battle there. Wyatt pointing out next week is Center Grove Carmel. He's going to make the drive? Aren't you in Vincennes? You're driving from Vincennes to the Center Grove Carmel game? Where is that? Is that at Carmel? Up on the north side? Man, that's a haul. And if it's not, it's at Center Grove, which is over at Greenwood, and that's my man getting after it. Gotta love it. It's at Carmel, he says. How far of a drive is that from Vincennes to Carmel? Man, that should be a heck of a game, though. Carmel last week down at Louisville Trinity, trailing, and I think they came back to win that game, didn't they? Late. That's a big win. Hell of a game. He's got no class on Friday. So, hey, man. Well, good. You can let us know exactly what happened. You can be our reporter for that, Wyatt. That'd be great to see that. He'll be home in Lagodi. Oh, so he's just over 2 hours. Just over 2 hours. There's your man going up, driving 2 hours to see a high school football game. It's not just any high school football game. It'll be a good one. So there's that. But love that. Yeah, get out and support the high school kids, man. They're fun games to watch. They really are. Let's see. Indiana statewide. Let's see if I can see any of the Southern Indiana boys. They're not jumping out at me. Evansville Bossies at Evansville Central. Modern Day is at Castle. North is at Memorial. Eastern's at Blackford. Up in Fort Wayne, you got Concordia at Homestead. North is at Dwenger. Northrop is at South. And Wayne is at Wayne Lures. A lot of Fort Wayne teams playing each other this week. Gibson Southern at New Albany. Now, how does that game get scheduled? That's a different game that I'm not used to seeing scheduled. The schedules have changed so much over the years. Jasper's at Evansville Harrison. Well, Jasper's usually pretty good. Kokomo at Plymouth. Just trying to see some of these bigger games or bigger names and whatnot. Didn't even see the Highlanders. Silver Creek's at Salem. Smaller team down south. But go out and check them out, man. Yeah, let's see. Carmel was down in 17-0 and won 49-38. Man, do I wish I would have been at that game down there in Louisville. That would have been a hell of a game. Wow. Holy cow. Man. Yeah, really wish I would have been down there for that. Better have your ticket. Oh. Well, you might be right. I don't know what their stadium holds, but they've got 5,000 students, 6,000 students in there, so I know they've got a pretty big one. Pete says the Frankfurt hot dogs versus the Clinton Prairie hot dogs. Are you kidding me? There's two hot dogs in this state. I knew the Frankfurt hot dogs, and it made sense, and it's hilarious. But the Clinton Prairie are the hot dogs. They should have been the Prairie Dogs. Right? Could have had the Frankfurt hot dogs and the Clinton Prairie Dogs. They should have just been the dogs. Prairie, get it? Prairie Dogs? Ha ha. Yeah, that's why I'm not a comedian. Wyatt says that may be the game to go to this week, most likely. First time watching Brady Allen this season. Thanks a lot to Glenn Rainey. Have a great weekend, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, and everybody. We appreciate you, of course. Okay, Clinton Prairie are the Gophers. Now that makes more sense. That makes complete sense. Should have still been the Prairie Dogs. But then you'd had the Frankfurt hot dogs against Clinton Prairie Dogs. But I like that one much better. But what's everybody got planned this weekend? Sports-wise, it's just kind of calmed down. Like I said, it's week 0. They got a few football games for you to get you a taste. What's the weather going to be like? I haven't checked that out. It's not bad right now. It's been so daggone warm, but it looks like it's going to get back up into the 90s again today and tomorrow and Sunday before finally see a cooling off next week. Wow. 10-degree drop off next week. So I'm sure the football players are looking forward to that. This has been a hot week to practice, man. A hot week to practice. Ross is down where he is this weekend. They have Summer Nights Cruise Car Show and he's down at Lake Cumberland. Air show. Nice. Some summer festivities ending. It's wrapping up. It's time. People are back in school. Schools have started. It's time to get the fall schedule going, man. Football kicking off. High schools are already kicked off. We're a week away from college football kicking off for us. Week 0 this weekend, so you can watch some college football. Get out, do a few things in the yard, take care of that stuff. Do something nice for somebody. That I need to do that as always. But that's a good time to do something. And then how many of you are actually planning to come to IU football games? Which games are you already planned on coming to? Do you have tickets to games already? I don't want, if you're just planning, if you say, yeah, I'm planning on it. No. Who has tickets right now? I'd like to know. And we will be giving a pair of tickets. I think that Cincinnati game is going to sell out because of the graciousness of a listener who wishes to remain anonymous. We will have a pair of tickets to give away to that Cincinnati game. And looking forward to that because, like I said, that's definitely probably going to be sold out. I think it's already down to what I saw, 120 single tickets available. The, what you call the rooftop at the Rock deal, that's sold out for 3 or 4 games already. I've seen. You only have 6. So that'll probably happen, especially it may be more difficult in the waning part of the season when it's cold out there, but we'll see. Man, it's been a fun show. Cannot tell you guys how much we appreciate you enough. A big thanks to Alec Lasley, Dustin Dopirak, Mike Farrell from Rivals, Dustin Dopirak, of course, from Bloomington Herald Times. Make sure you give all those guys a follow if you don't. Indiana Rivals has an unbelievable special, $1.68 a month. You need to go there and check that out for them, for that coverage, so they can keep providing that for you. We've had a great time with you this week. We'll be back on Monday to do it again. Don Fisher joins us on Monday to start the rest of the season through football, through basketball. Looking forward to that. Charlie Miller's back on Monday. So we've got a great schedule planned for next week. Lots of stuff coming up, special stuff to introduce to you as well. So stay tuned for all that. Until then, for John, the producer, thanks to all you guys. Until Monday, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.